Dear participants, we are now ready to resume the third and last session of today, which will be focused on strengthening second-generation voluntary national review processes. And we will just hear about the plans of Kazakhstan for their 2022 voluntary national review, and hear some good practices and new approaches or tools that can be used to strengthen multi-stakeholder participation and evidence-based writing of those VNRs. And with these words, I would like to hand over to the moderator of the session, Mr. Nicolai Pomoshnikov, Head of Office of the Sub-Regional Office for North and Central Asia of ESCAP. Nicolai, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Natalia. Dear colleagues, distinguished participants, we smoothly move to third session, which is very important for all our member states, strengthening second generation VNR processes. I must tell you that fulfillment of obligations under the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development requires countries to undertake regular and inclusive reviews of progress towards achieving the SDGs at national and subnational levels. An essential component of the review and implementation of 2030 Agenda and SDGs at national level is voluntary national reviews. All member states from North and Central Asia have already undergone this exercise for the last 5 years. Some countries more advanced in this regard. I would say countries from South Caucasus, they are more advanced. They already prepared at least 2 VNRs for the last 5 years. Azerbaijan is leader in this regard because Azerbaijan prepared 3 voluntary national reviews. Countries from Central Asia and Russia, they prepared 1 VNR. And currently 2 countries from North and Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, announced they also would like to prepare next VNRs in this regard. So it will be great to exchange views in this regard and to be better prepared for the new round of VNRs in our countries. Processes of preparing VNRs provide an opportunity to share experiences, including challenges, best practices, lessons learned, and generate efforts towards the strengthening the VNR processes. And this session serves as a good platform for follow-up, review, and preparation for the next VNR submission. And in my list of speakers for the opening, we have Mr. Amson Sibanda. Mr. Amson Sibanda is the chief of the National Strategies and Capacity Building branch in the Division for Sustainable Development Goals, UNDESA. And prior to his appointment in January 2020, he was the chief of the Social Policy Analysis section in UNDESA. And Dr. Shibanda has published widely on African demography, migration and employment, children's schooling, fertility trends, HIV/AIDS, child marriage, household structure, poverty, and inequality. So over to you, Dr. Shibanda.
Thank you, Nicolai, for those welcoming remarks. And I'm pleased to be with you this morning. Of course, this is a very important session on multi-stakeholder forum on implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals, which focuses on the strengthening of second generation of voluntary national review processes. We have about 9 years left into the decade of action to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals. So a session that is dedicated to strengthening follow-up is very timely indeed. As countries conduct their second and third voluntary national reviews, it is encouraging to observe a broadening and deepening of 2030 Agenda implementation and follow-up. In 2021, countries reported on the continued involvement of legislatures, as well as activities of other independent state institutions, such as Supreme Audit institutions. Countries also reported that the SDGs are being increasingly anchored among actors in society through a combination of arrangements, such as multi-stakeholder councils, as well as less formal initiatives and partnerships. Notably, several countries covered initiatives taken to involve the private sector in national implementation efforts. In your region, the Voluntary National Review of Azerbaijan outlines steps taken to foster and promote entrepreneurship and decent jobs. Countries are increasingly reporting on SDG actions taken by local and regional governments, such as how SDGs are integrated into sub-national plans and strategies, as well as voluntary local reviews conducted by local authorities. These are exciting developments happening in all regions. It remains critical for the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs to be integrated into national policy frameworks, whether national developments or at the sectoral level, or indeed both. The second generation of voluntary national reviews contain a range of lessons and good practices to be shared. I look forward to continued engagement on follow-up to the voluntary national reviews, and thank our ESCAP colleagues for the opportunity to participate today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sibanda, for your very good welcome remarks. I must tell you that UNDESA, our good partner, we are organizing jointly a lot of meetings, and today's session is a good manifestation of our close collaboration. Thank you very much for your kind support and contribution to the success of this session. Colleagues, we are moving to another sub-session, introductory presentations. And first in my list of speakers is Ms. Caitlin Louise-Porter, Senior VNR Advisor of ESCAP. She provides technical and strategic support to countries developing their VNRs, and Caitlin has a background in governance, strategic planning, and intergovernmental processes. Prior to working with ESCAP, she worked with the government of Timor-Leste as the strategic team leader and lead writer for 2019 Timor-Leste VNR. And she has also worked with the UNDP, European Commission, and intergovernmental NGOs, international NGOs. She holds a master's in governance from the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex. Over to you, Caitlin. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Nicolai. It's great to be with you today. I know my colleagues were going to share a PowerPoint presentation. So if they are able to put that, I think Valentin was going to share that for me. But I'll just say it's wonderful to be here. This is always my favorite session at the sub-regional forums, of course, because I'm a VNR advisor. And it's great to be on a panel today with my distinguished representatives from Kazakhstan, who have put their hand up to do their voluntary national review next year. And it's really exciting to see countries in this region getting involved in the VNR process this year and presenting next year. So my role for this afternoon is to help set the scene. As we've seen from the title of this session's about the second generation voluntary national reviews. Many countries in this region are now stepping up to do their second or third voluntary national review, as we saw Azerbaijan do this year and did a fantastic job. So what I'm going to share with you today is some key things to consider and to discuss some of the lessons learned from voluntary national reviews. If I could have the next slide. So there's sort of 5 or 6 key things I'm going to discuss. Revisiting the purpose of the voluntary national review. What is that added value? Why do we encourage countries to do it, and why do countries are really keen to step up and do a voluntary national review? What are the expectations of second generation voluntary national reviews? And what are some of the lessons that we've learned from countries all over the world that have been engaged in this process? We will also briefly discuss how you can try to integrate stakeholder engagement into the VNR process. And I know that's going to be a following section coming up after this. I'm also going to discuss very briefly about the role of data and evidence-based planning for the VNR. And then I'll just share some new resources that ESCAP has just developed. Okay, next slide. So let's revisit the purpose of a voluntary national review. I know we do this often every year when we have this session, but I think it's a great opportunity to just step back and say, well, what is this all about? And I know that many countries that I've spoken to this year all over the globe have said it's a great opportunity to really build momentum, continuing to get momentum from all parts of society in a national conversation about, well, how are we doing on SDGs? How can we do better? How do we accelerate progress? And how do we really tackle some of these setbacks? And in order to do that, we really need to look at the data and understand where we're having progress. And from which groups or which parts of the country are they experiencing setbacks? And which of the SDGs are we making the most progress on? So it's an opportunity to track that progress. But in particular, for these second and third generation VNRs, it really is an opportunity to identify concrete actions, next steps and new partnerships to really accelerate the progress. So it's a really unique opportunity to really take stock, look forward and develop some key actions for the future. The next slide, please. So what do we expect? What have we learned about doing voluntary national reviews? And what do we expect for countries stepping up and doing a second one or even a third one? We really encourage countries to really go back and look at their first voluntary national review and to use that as a starting point and to really try to directly link and connect the two reports. But ideally, we don't want the reports to just stand alone. We want to see, well, what happened to the next steps from your first review? What were your commitments? And go back and look at those commitments and say, okay, we did well on some of them, but there were challenges in tackling some of the other ones. And therefore, this is what we're going to do next. We also encourage countries to really, in their second and third VNR, to really conduct a much more in-depth analysis of the causes of the implementation challenges. If you have had problems improving education for girls or really improving water and sanitation in rural areas, what have been those challenges and for which groups in particular? And what are the key setbacks? And really provide much more in-depth analytical analysis in the second and third VNRs. Many of the first VNRs were very much a baseline. This is where we are. And we really expect for the second and third ones that actually this is an opportunity to dive a lot deeper and to be much more analytical. And one of the best ways to do that is to hear perspectives from different groups. And we're really seeing in second and third generation VNRs that more and more stakeholders, as Nicolai and both absents mentioned earlier, about parliaments, about the private sector, about different women's groups, the media, different actors are involved in the VNR process. And I'll talk more about that later. Next slide, please. So some of the lessons that we've been learning from VNRs over the last few years since the 2030 agenda started, and in particular from countries within your region, is really that the stakeholder engagement process, the more focused it is, the more targeted, the more clear about what your objectives are, and the clear opportunities there are for feedback, the better the quality the VNR is, and the more impact it's likely to have. And in particular, supporting countries to really have a strong narrative and storyline in their VNRs. So rather than just providing data on all the 17 SDGs, we want to see that. We want to see all the data, but we'd really like to hear what are the key messages emerging from your country? What is the narrative and the story that you want to tell globally and also within your country? And to really help that choose some focused SDGs that really align with your national priorities and the key story you want to tell. And we often talk about disaggregating data, but what we're seeing is that some of the VNRs that really include that data in the report really pull apart some of the stories that are going on with gender, with health, with economic growth, and put that data in the report in lots of different ways, really helps you get at the real story with SDGs. And it makes it a much more powerful report and a much more powerful process. And as I mentioned before, we're learning that countries that have developed clear, concrete steps. We saw that this year in the high-level political forum. Countries were being very clear about what they wanted to do, what they needed to tackle. Maybe it's because of COVID, but countries are really getting quite specific and having action-orientated recommendations in their voluntary national reviews, especially when it's their second and third review. Next slide, please. So one of the key things we're suggesting to countries as they do their second review is to really take stock of the first one. How did the process go? How were stakeholders involved? Was there enough time in different actors? How did the institutional setup work? Was there enough time to engage different parts of government in the drafting process? How did you involve the National Statistics Office? All these questions about the process for the first VNR. It's really great to take a step back and look at that, to have a look at the progress since your first VNR. And I'll discuss that more when I look at data, but also at the implementation challenges. So these are sort of the three key areas we encourage countries like Kazakhstan, who's right now is starting their process, is to take a look back before they launch forward to really think about the lessons learned. Okay, next slide, thanks. And here we've given you some suggestions of different things that you could look for when looking at your first voluntary national review. How were decisions made and what was the structure of the institutional SDG council or body for the VNR? Did you budget enough for stakeholder engagement or translation? How did the data collection and analysis go? How did you present the data in the first review? How were stakeholders engaged in different parts of the process? Where could you improve communication about the VNR so different actors and different parts of government know what's going on? And how did the drafting process go? It's often very rushed. How could you incorporate opportunities for feedback in different parts of the VNR process? So this is one example of a tool that you could use when looking back at your first review. Next slide, thanks. I'm going to share with you some resources at the end, but many of you know, having done a voluntary national review, some of the different stages from the planning stage, gathering input stage and data collection, drafting the review, presenting at the HLPF, and then increasingly we're asking countries to start thinking now about what happens immediately after you present that report in New York and encouraging stakeholders to be involved. So if you turn to the next slide, you'll see that what we're trying to support countries is to see how to involve stakeholders in all those 5 stages. So if you see the next slide, and this presentation is translated into Russian and will be circulated. So here's an example of different ways you can involve stakeholders in all parts of the VNR process, and not just in the drafting reviewing stage where you send out a copy of the report and ask for feedback, or not just in a couple of stakeholder meetings, but actually right now as you're planning your VNR process, when you're setting up your mechanisms and planning the stakeholder engagement, ask stakeholders how they would like to be involved. And maybe also asking different actors, maybe they've got some great new geospatial data that would be really interesting to use in the VNR, and encouraging different actors to share their data and also participate in different thematic workshops on different topics that align with your focus areas. So stakeholders can be involved in all of the stages there and not just in sort of one stakeholder workshop. Okay, I'll go to the next slide. Just before I wrap up, I just wanted to share with you some different ways that we're encouraging countries to really promote an evidence-based approach to the VNR. One thing we're encouraging countries more to do is to collect data and disaggregate it, but also analyze that data to really try and understand how different groups within your country or different regions or women and men, how has their access to services improved or gone backwards slightly over the last few years, and encourage countries to use that disaggregated data in the report. So you can really see what is the trajectory since the first review and from now. Or hopefully, if you've got lots of data points from your different surveys, so hopefully you can also use that then as well in your data. And the reliable data is crucial also for the evidence-based interventions, and really is crucial to address key blockages that maybe have hindered your implementation before. So the reliability of your data, the accuracy of your data, but also analysing the data is crucial for an evidence-based approach to the VNR. In one of the guidance tools that we have developed, there's a section all about data planning, and we talk through data planning tips, how to do data gap analysis, how to problem solve some of the data gaps that you might have, how you can use disaggregated data in your report, some examples of different types of non-traditional data, like geospatial data or social media data, and also how you can communicate that in a powerful way in your report. So there's a lot more I could talk to you about evidence-based approaches to the VNR, but this is just a snapshot about the importance of using data critically as a key storyteller in your voluntary national review. And just as I wrap up, my next slide will just show you some of those examples of data planning, about the importance of really engaging with your National Statistical Office. They're a key stakeholder in the VNR, and I think they're a really key actor to involve from the very beginning. And also your sector ministries. They're critical as well because they have access to lots of administrative data that really helps you deepen your understanding of education or health beyond just the national surveys. As I mentioned, there's good data gap analysis, and ESCAP has got some great frameworks for that. Developing a plan to address some of the data challenges that you might have, and also developing and using a mixture of different types of data and developing maybe a national indicator matrix, which could help you develop indicators that are most appropriate for your national context. So that was just a snapshot on data, as I know this session wanted to look at evidence-based planning. And I'll now just share with you 3 resources very quickly that are really helpful for countries developing their reviews. Number 1, we have a new course, an e-tutorial on developing second-generation voluntary national reviews. And you can pick and choose different sections that you're really interested in, from stakeholder engagement to data to reflecting on your first VNR. That course is live now, and we'll be sharing the link shortly so you could participate in that e-tutorial. We also have a new practical guidance tool on developing second VNRs that has lots of good checklists and tools, and also 2 new policy briefs that are developed. And I'll show you on the next slide. This is the webpage of the practical guidance tool for second VNRs. That's what it looks like. And the final slide will show you the links. So that's the practical guidance tool. These are the 2 policy briefs that have just been released, which are really practical tools for you to use now as you think about your voluntary national review. And finally, at the end there, this is where you can go to enroll in the e-tutorial, the course on developing a second generation voluntary national review. These resources have all been developed by ESCAP. And on the final page, you'll see the links to all these new resources. So I'm sure Natalia will send out this presentation in Russian, and you'll be able to click on those links and go straight to the resources. So I hope I've set the scene well, and I hope I didn't speak too fast for the translation. I'm sure I probably did. But it's wonderful to be with you this afternoon, and I look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caitlin, for very informative and comprehensive presentation. I think it's very useful. Yeah, so we will share all references, how to get to these resources. I think it's very important for our colleagues and member states. So next speaker in my list is Ms. Baketgul Kambar, Director of the Center for Strategic Research and Sustainable Development, Economic Research Institute of Kazakhstan. And Baketgul, she is providing expert and analytical support for building an integrated national financial system in the Republic of Kazakhstan. And she prepared a few monographs, a new model of state planning in the Republic of Kazakhstan, and evaluation of the effectiveness of the implementation of state programs. So over to you, Baketgul.
Добрый день, коллеги. Спасибо за предоставленное.
Good day, colleagues. Thank you very much for this opportunity to make presentation. Today we have a great event. We have really good opportunity to share our experience, and so it was great to listen to the previous speaker. So what we should be guided by in our future efforts. Everybody says that the preparation of VNR is a good opportunity for the country. And back in 2019, we had the chance, for the first time, Kazakhstan presented its VNR, and we just were a part of that. I work with the Economic Research Institute. Our institute is a secretariat for SDG implementation and sustainable development in general in Kazakhstan. And we had a chance to take part in preparing of that voluntary national review. I think our experience will be useful for other countries, but I can see our colleagues who are just dealing with this on a systemic basis, and I'm really glad that we enjoy this opportunity to learn. And thanks to Caitlin, who just provided us a clue to what guides we can use. And now I'd like to share our experience, how we passed that way back in 2019, and to tell you about our plans for the next year, because as it was mentioned, in 2022, Kazakhstan is intending to present second generation VNR or SDG. It looks like back in 2019, well, I'm not going to go into detail, but I would like just to say that it was a great opportunity just to unite not only representatives of governmental authorities who are dealing directly with this issue, but just to involve independent experts, representatives of civil society, not governmental organizations. And jointly, we prepared final draft of that document. And I would like just to emphasize a big role of the National Statistics Bureau, which prepared statistics addendum or annex, statistical annex to VNR. So actually this structure is supported by many countries, but at the same time, it just helped us when we were conducting trainings, workshops, and we're conducting consultations with all stakeholders, including by regions, across regions. And of course, big role is played by methodological support and technical support provided by experts. In 2019, we had a great chance to enjoy experts' support provided by UN agencies and ADB. And as a result, as you can see, in preparation of the review, we were supported not only by governmental authorities and NGOs, International organizations played active role, as well as other organizations, including think tanks of the country, Institute of Human and Children Rights in the Republic of Kazakhstan, including public associations by the areas of their activities. In addition, if you look at the structure, the EMEA structure is quite standard, I would say. As far as methodology is concerned, I think that it's quite understandable. So because it was description of the methodology, what methodology was just laid the basis for our document. But I would like just to note, to mention nationalization of SDGs. What efforts, what areas were discussed with the UNDP, which just conducted express assessment, which allowed us to show the coverage of SDGs of the system with SDGs of the system of state planning. Many countries would like just to show what they attained, what they achieved when in global agenda implementation. But we just got the answer in relation to the complex and fast on assessment. By the moment of the presentation of the first VNR in Kazakhstan, so that assessment was had been conducted twice back in 2016, which was strengthened by the experts of the Economic Research Institute and with workshops prior to that, conducted prior to that. In addition, as you know, back in 2019, countries made presentations in 5 goals, 4, 8, 10, 13, 16, 17, actually 6 of them. But in spite of this, as it was the first VNR, we just tried to present information in all 17 goals. Now, question, what will happen in the second VNR? How it is going to differ from the first VNR, first generation VNR? So we are facing this question.
Now, we cannot say that the final decision is made because we are facing a lot of deliberations ahead. Based on these deliberations, so we could adjust our report draft, but currently, based on our concept, the Sustainable Development Secretariat and the Economic Research Institute proposed the following. As you see, we have standard chapters, but we believe that we also have to demonstrate and to analyze accomplishments of our first VNR, because we realize that every country while providing their own VNR at the end, setting up the following steps. And that is why we would like to compare what had been accomplished since the first Kazakh VNR. It will be the first review on accomplishments of our SDGs process since the first VNR. And as it was mentioned already, it is quite an important task. In addition, after the first VNR presentation in Kazakhstan, we are currently very actively involved into the system work on integrating SDGs into the strategic planning system of our country. And I believe it is a very important task to demonstrate what is going on this field. Together with the UNDP and other UN family organizations like UN ESCAP, UN Women and others, we are involved in a big scope of activities on budgeting SDGs. We cannot say that we have accomplished this process, but the analytical work in this regard is in progress systematically. And that is why, based on these accomplishments, we could demonstrate preliminary results of gender analysis financing. Also, I believe it is very important to demonstrate the assessment of SDGs accomplishments, but here it is also very important to demonstrate not only statistical data analysis, and we here also planning to demonstrate the dynamics of the current situation, considering our population opinion. That is why in Kazakhstan we introduced quite an important tool called Mission 2030. It is a business game which give us a chance because of the UNDP support. We introduced such a business game, and this is a very good tool to determine our priorities through the prism of the population needs. When you are drafting VNR, it is important not to include official statistical data, but it is also important to add vox populi, shall we say, in order to demonstrate how population opinion had been shifted since the time of the first VNR, because we know that our people, our citizens are our beneficiaries, and the pandemic had a serious impact on them, which of course should be taken into consideration in the SDGs progress. Also, it is quite important to demonstrate our vision until 2030. And I believe that until 2030, we will have more opportunities to demonstrate our accomplishments. But this second VNR, I believe it will be not only a tool to demonstrate our analytical results, but also we are pretty much hopeful, at least, that presentation of our second VNR for Kazakhstan will be a very good opportunity to understand where we are and which steps should be undertaken to implement the development agenda until 2030.
For your very interesting report on experience of Kazakhstan in preparation of this VNR and starting a process of new VNR preparation. ESCAP, I must tell you that ESCAP is a member of the working group for 2022 preparation, providing necessary assistance for Kazakhstan, and we will be happy to cooperate with you closely on preparation of a wonderful second VNR report. Thank you very much. Colleagues, next in my list of speakers is a representative from Azerbaijan. We received confirmation from Azerbaijan, Elnur. He will share the experience of Azerbaijan in preparation of VNRs. So Elnur, over to you. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you all. And first of all, I really do appreciate for great opportunity to share our experience as a third time VNR presenter. As you already know that the Republic of Azerbaijan, the first country in South Caucasus, presented third times voluntary national reviews. And that one, guys, today, unfortunately, tomorrow we will have huge meeting in our city regarding to post-COVID time and post-COVID relation, public-private partnership on sustainable development. That's why first of all, I'm really sorry I couldn't be here too much time, but staying here short time, I will try to mention significant brief notes, what we did, what we are going to do, and what's our next steps on sustainable development goals. First of all, I really want to mention again, the government of Azerbaijan admits 2030 agenda on sustainable development goals is one of the main roadmaps, not only on the way of building the opportunities for inclusive and sustainable economic growth, but it also opens a new windows for strengthening multilateral cooperation partnership to pass a race to bright future is needed. Submission of 312 national reviews illustrate our frame how the government of Azerbaijan approach the fulfillment of its commitment. And in this case, as the outcome of all action, Azerbaijan ranked among top countries in Eastern Europe and CIS and was leader in the region on SDG index in accordance with the 2020 report of United Nations on Sustainable Development Network. And I really want to mention the COVID-19 and how it is directly influenced on sustainable development in the countries. So particularly in our country, the COVID-19 crisis sharply exposed the implementation of SDGs pillars, and also it has a massive negative impact on financial sustainability of the countries. And this particularly the natural obligation lockdowns and the naturally pause the economic activities, it has declined the gross domestic product in the year of 2020. And in this case, the government of Azerbaijan tried to focus on the framework financing the SDGs, particularly regarding to midterm expenditure framework. That's why a couple of years ago, the Republic of Azerbaijan already confirmed midterm expenditure framework regarding to sustainable development goals financing issues. And the midterm expenditure framework particularly cover the main directions of SDGs: agriculture, environment, and education. And so far, this is related not directly, indirectly 17 goals, but it is expected it will be covered directly 17 goals, and the areas will be enlarged in subsequent years. And also regarding to financing the SDGs, it is absolutely, it is accepted time that it is a really hard time, and with the post-COVID time, it is fantastic to mention that we, Azerbaijan, the government of Azerbaijan confirmed 2021 and 2025 the action plans and the national priorities. And the national priorities of Azerbaijan will focus on mainly financing the SDGs. And the national priorities for social economic development of the Republic of Azerbaijan focus on the clean environment, green growth, great return to the liberated territories, competitive human capital, a society based on dynamic and steadily growing competitive economy. And in this case, we have to mention with our great pleasure that Azerbaijan 2030 national priorities, in which adopted 100% sustainable development goals are will be high level, will be huge advantage to implement the SDGs in the next decade. Actually, not only next decade, we can mention next 9 years, because we are going to end of this year as well. And briefly, guys, I really want to mention that Azerbaijan is going to be focused on to new partnership with national and international companies. In this case, we open the government of Azerbaijan, particularly the government parties, open the doors for companies, all the national and international companies in Azerbaijan. That's why today it must be mentioned that more than 12 countries submit national sustainability report, and they focus on what they do and what they need to do and what's the challenge and what they need from the government. And actually, the government of Azerbaijan demonstrates their support to the national and international companies, and particularly the sustainability, because we already know that regarding to Addis Ababa action plan, there is huge gap in financial gap to implement the SDGs 100%, like all 17 goals. In this station, the partnership is important. The partnership is significant. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, we, government of Azerbaijan, using the opportunity, I really want to ask everyone, if you need a partnership, you need a strengthen the cooperation, please do not hesitate to contact me, and I will do our best to make new partnership, new relationship. Thank you, and I really wish great idea, great discussions for this conference, for this event, and I'm really sorry again that I couldn't be too much time because of so busy time, busy season. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Elnur, for your for sharing experience of Azerbaijan. It's very important because, as I mentioned, Azerbaijan is a leader in preparation of VNRs, and it will be great to take the best experience, the best practice from our member states. So, and as Elnur mentioned about the importance of partnerships, I must tell you that we are trying to bring different stakeholders for sharing the experience in preparation of VNRs. And one of the examples, this is our next speaker, Ms. Tamar Lakabidze. She is a monitoring and evaluation specialist and SDG focal point with the Caucasus Environmental NGO network. And her work includes leading projects, monitoring and internal evaluation, as well as coordinating SDG related activities and organization. So we will be happy if you share your best experience in this area. Over to you, Tamar.
Thank you so much, Nicolai. It is my great pleasure and honor to represent Georgia today at this event. Thanks a lot for having me. If I could see the presentation. All right, so as you said, I represent Georgian environmental organization SEN, and we are very actively involved in the implementation of SDGs. We are actually one of the co-chairs of one of the working groups under SDG Council of Georgia. So today I would like to present to you my personal perspective on the VNR process and how the engagement of stakeholders happened. Next slide, please. So firstly, I will briefly tell you what happened. Georgia presented second VNR last year. And if we compare it to the first VNR that we presented in 2016, it was a major step forward, both in terms of content and in terms of the process. So the first VNR was presented so early on that it was more like a political commitment from Georgia to show that we are really trying, we are really taking this commitment. But there was really nothing to report on in terms of targets or indicators, because by that time, Georgia did not really had finalized nationalization of SDGs. So it was more like an overview of our general commitment and ambition. But last year, it was actually so the first time when Georgia had an opportunity to report on the indicators that and the targets that we nationalized. And also in terms of the process, it was definitely a step forward and a progress because there was a consultation with the relevant stakeholders. And in terms of consultation, so how it happened was that there were a number of experts hired by SDG Secretariat of Georgia, which is Administration of the Government of Georgia. And they prepared the first draft version based on the data that was available in Georgia by the time. And this draft document was shared then with the relevant stakeholders, with the members of the working group. And we had an opportunity to review this document, to comment on it, to provide our feedback. And then the final draft version was again shared with us, with some of our suggestions taken into account. And one more point in terms of engaging different stakeholders in VNR process. Last year, there was a separate report prepared by Global Compact Network Georgia, which specifically focuses on the contributions of private sector to SDGs implementation. And that was also part of the VNR package that Georgia presented to UN. Next slide, please. So as I said, it was a big step forward if we compare it to the first VNR, but still it was not perfect. And there's still room for improvement and a lot of challenges that we're still facing because for many reasons, but mostly maybe because Georgia was not so active in MDGs, and we are really learning by doing in terms of implementing SDGs. So to begin with, when it comes to meaningful engagement, as you may already know, there are different levels of engagement. So being informed about opportunities is just the first basic level. Then having opportunities to consult before or after the decisions are made, that's of course a step forward, but being actually involved in the decision-making process is a much higher and much more appreciated level of engagement. So what happened last year, it was we were somewhere between informing and consulting. So there was an opportunity to comment, as I said, on the document, but the decision-making process itself was not so open. So that's something that gives us room for development and improvement the next time. Also, I would like to say that the timing for providing feedback was quite limited, and that is also what we also gave this feedback later on to SDG Secretariat, that for more meaningful engagement, a bit more time is needed. And obviously, like in many other countries, in Georgia as well, COVID restrictions have prevented us from really engaging local stakeholders too, and having face-to-face meetings. So whatever happened, it was only online, and obviously that is also something that limits opportunities for engagement. And last but not least, what I could observe from, especially from civil society sector, is that there is very little understanding on how to contribute to VNR process from their point of view, because VNR in Georgia's experience, in Georgian case, the VNR report relies on the statistical data and on the administrative data. However, there is, of course, also a lot done by non-state stakeholders, by NGOs, a lot of projects that obviously contribute to the development goals of the country and to SDGs, which are not duly reflected in the report. Now, when I say that it's not reflected, I wouldn't like to say that it's a matter of lack of willingness from either side or lack of motivation, but it's more like a lack of understanding how to do that and lack of knowledge how to actually do that. Next slide, please. So having said that, for me personally, as I represent civil society sector, my biggest ambition or my biggest wish for the third VNR, whenever Georgia presents that in a couple of years, is that NGO sector, civil society sector, and other non-state stakeholders are better reflected in the VNR process. So they're not simply, I wish that they're not simply provided opportunity to comment on the draft report, but rather are given opportunity to contribute to the report themselves, and that they understand how to do that. So I think in order for that to happen, more support is needed, first of all, to NGOs, so that they understand how to engage in meaningful dialogue on SDGs and how to link their activities to SDG targets and indicators and reflect their progress. But at the same time, of course, more dialogue and support and collaboration is needed with the government so that they make sure that there are providing proactive measures for ensuring enabling environment so that this dialogue happens. That would be all from my side. Thank you so much for having me, and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Tamar, for excellent experience of the NGO work for support of VNRs. It's really very important, and we need to strengthen our partnership with different stakeholders. It's really beneficial for all member states. Colleagues, we are working more than 1 hour, so probably I suggest to make just a short break, just for maybe 3 minutes to refill our cups of coffee and come back. We will have another very interesting subsession on strengthening evidence-based approaches. So let's have a short break. Okay, colleagues, I think we had our break, and let's come to another subsession, strengthening evidence-based approach. And I would like to give the floor to Mr. Arslan Kerimov from the Institute of International Relations, Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Turkmenistan. Over to you, Mr. Kerimov.
Thank you, Nicolai. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Okay,
can hear you and we can see you well.
Okay. Dear distinguished intellectuals, leaders, organizers, and guests, I am delighted to speak at this event, which makes our dialogue especially enjoyable. I would also like to express my deep gratitude and respect to the organizers of this event. At the beginning of my speech, I addressed you, the audience, as intellectuals. I did this on purpose to stress the fact that people in this room belong to the small percentage of the population of Earth who had access to quality education, clean water, and are developing in conditions of socioeconomic stability. However, and regrettably so, having access to quality education is still a privilege for many children on this planet. For example, statistically, every third child in this world has access to quality education, while the rest of children are left behind. And this is only one example from hundreds. And that means we have so many problems to solve for our bright future. That unsolved problems can be the core reason of many social and economic challenges of the people's lives. This is why I am strong belief that cooperation is the key improving lives of many. A wise man once said, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. So this brings me to the next point, the importance of achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to improve the quality of life of every human in this world. In this context, as a young SDG ambassador, I would like to raise a point about the youth movement for SDGs and the need of youth empowerment and youth representatives in the government sector based on the experience I had in my country. Allow me to first explain who the young ambassadors are. Young SDG ambassadors are young leaders between the age of 18 and 30, committed to the United Nations principles and values with a global mindset and strong desire to act in the interest of all humanity. 2015 was a starting point for the global community to make the further progress on innovative approaches to sustainable development. To decision taken by the United Nations member states during the session of the United Nations General Assembly identified the role of youth as the most crucial in achieving the 2030s agenda, which was reflected in the domestic policies of Turkmenistan and many other countries. Subsequently, in 2019 and 2020, two generations of Turkmen's young SDG ambassadors were inaugurated. So far, my peers and I, we have had the opportunity to organize and participate in many events, both locally and internationally. We have achieved a great popularity among representatives of our local committees. With their kind support, we strive to use our youth potential for the benefit of our country and people of Turkmenistan. I would also like to highlight the value of the unique experience every SDG ambassador gained while being a part of a community of talented individuals. Our team has a number of brilliant journalists who work closely with local media, young artists and entertainers, future politicians and lawyers, and also economists who are valued in both the private and public sector. Thanks to the efforts of our government, young ambassadors have direct access to representatives of government structure and agencies, which makes our mission of making impact much easier. Today, most of the youth of Turkmenistan are already aware of the 2030 SDG agenda. This is all thanks to the United Nations office in Turkmenistan, the relevant ministers and agencies involved in promoting sustainable development among the population. And of course, our young people, without whom this mission would not have been possible. Dear speakers, guests, organizers, and participants, I would like to thank each of you once again for your participation in our event and for the contribution you are making toward our youth's development. I am sure Walt's experience in this context is just as rich, and I am looking forward to learning more from the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arslan Kerim, for very interesting speech and sharing your views. Really, youth movement for SDGs is very important, and we need to use this potential more widely, definitely. Colleagues, next in my list of speakers is Ms. Natalia Ignatova, Deputy Director of Statistics Department, Eurasian Economic Commission. Eurasian Economic Commission is our good partner, with whom we cooperate very closely, and it will be very interesting to know the views of our colleagues from Eurasian Economic Commission. Natalia Ignatova, she is responsible for demographic and social statistics, SDG monitoring, and SDMX implementation at the Eurasian Economic Union region. Over to you, Natalia.
Да, добрый день, уважаемые коллеги. Большое спасибо, Николай, за возможность выступить сейчас.
Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. Many thanks, Nicolai, for giving me a chance to speak. I will share my screen with my slides now. Distinguished colleagues, we all know that the main role in implementation, in SDG implementation, is played by the countries themselves. And the countries members of Eurasian Economic Union from the very start are involved into these activities. And at the moment, at their respective national levels, they introduced the indicators borrowed from the global SDGs indicators system. They also developed their own national reporting platforms, and some of them represented already second VNR at the high-level political forum. The main focus here is to facilitate data exchange between all the stakeholders in SDGs progress. They also would like to mobilize partnership and policy for SDGs implementation. Currently, more than 100 countries demonstrated their reports on SDG progress, and we are very pleased to admit that Eurasian countries are there. The main focus here is to be on the national priorities of long-term sustainable development. SDGs implementation in Eurasian Economic Union. First of all, I have to mention that the foundation documents, they are encompassed all the 17 SDGs and 108 targets. And we are monitoring, the Commission monitoring since 2018 and reporting on the progress in the Eurasian Economic Union countries. And in 2018, our Commission demonstrated the first report on SDGs program on the high-level political forum on SDGs. And we are the first regional unit which drafted such a report for discussion at the High Political Forum. Here we are focusing on priorities of our union and how they matched with the SDGs. The report encompassed 59 indicators on 9 SDGs all over the Eurasian Economic Union. Currently, we are monitoring much more indicators demonstrating the implementation of the regional programs which contribute into the SDGs program at the regional level. We are focusing on combination of member state activities, including their national priorities and integration agenda, based on which we're trying to approximate our legislative frameworks and economies. Our main focus for the next years is to reconcile the regional SDGs indicators, which include the most important indicators matched with the global SDGs. And frankly speaking, we are now preparing the second regional VNR at the HLPF closer to the 2025. Because I joined the Eurasian Economic Commission quite recently in February this year, monitoring, actually, I started together with my team back in the Federal Statistical Service of the Russian Federation last year. Russia demonstrated its first VNR at the HLPF, although they started the VNR back in 2019. The coordination of the VNR was by the Analytical Center at the Russian government, and we established 17 thematic working group, one per every SDG. In the composition of this working group, we have representatives of federal, regional, municipal governments, central bank, state agencies, institutions of civil sector, and various research and business organizations. Totally, in these working groups, we have more than 450 organizations, experts, and private entities from all over Russia. However, more than 200 experts directly involved in VNR and 200 organizations. The draft VNR had been the subject of open expert discussions, and our statistics agency was involved in all discussions. We also provided a special annex on this, which is available at the Rosstat website. Main focus was on the national projects, which we adopted in 2019. Human capital, comfort, environmental and economic growth. That is the so-called SDGs localization, because all 12 national programs encompassed 106 targets. I would say that most of the targets by the SDG, this or another way, reflected in the national doctrines, programs, and state development programs in Russia. In 2020, Accounting Chamber of the Russian Federation assessed the integration of SDGs into the state governance and assess the monitoring system of SDGs implementation in Russia. Maxim Reshetnikov, the Minister of Economic Development in the UN, demonstrated the first VNR on behalf of Russia. Based on my opinion, the VNR played a colossal role at the national level, not in terms of implementation of the 2020 agenda in Russia, This was an excellent opportunity to meet all the stakeholders within one platform, and it turned out that every participant has very significant activities on SDGs implementation from their respective sides. And SDG topic is now included in the agenda of all conferences and thematic events for further promotion of SDGs in Russia. Since 2015, Rosstat is actively involved into the UN monitoring system on SDGs, and we are also the members of steering group on statistics of sustainable development by the European statistical agencies. This group was in 2015 established to develop the roadmap on statistics in the area of sustainable development. 17 countries and 3 international organizations are members of the steering group. The roadmap was approved in June 2017 at the 65th plenary session of CAS, translated into Russian, French, and Spanish. This roadmap is a manual for the countries on how to monitor SDGs. And I would like to say that this roadmap was successful in all dimensions, but for us it is specifically important because the roadmap preparation started at the beginning of 2015, and because of our involvement into these activities, we managed to establish the monitoring of SDG progress at the national level. And because of such a success of this roadmap, in June 2021, the Conference of European Statistics endorsed the CAS steering committee, and in June this year, we endorsed the second edition of this roadmap, and next month, it will be published. Since the time of adoption of 2030 development agenda, countries develop significantly in this area. At the same time, statistical agencies encounter with many problems on monitoring statistics over SDG progress. The Roadmap to Zero has the whole system on production and distribution of data on SDGs. And here we have the description of what should be done, who are the main stakeholders and their role in SDGs monitoring and cooperation opportunities. The roadmap has specific activities, priorities, and recommendations. It also is a resource for the national politicians, international organizations, all the stakeholders who are involved in SDG monitoring. It is based on the implementation of the first roadmap. It is a collective experience of various participants. I also would like specifically pay attention on the addendum, where we have the case studies, best practices of the member states, and that's great that in this roadmap we have Armenian experience and other Eurasian countries. Yes, I'm about to finish, and I would like to say that the second roadmap edition on SDG statistics and the manual will be very useful for all the nations for the second VNR. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia, for comprehensive review and using different materials for the preparation of these reports by Russia and by Eurasian Economic Commission. In my list, next speaker is my good friend and colleague, Mr. Arman Badagbakht Nia. He is the head of Statistical Data Management Unit at ESCAP Statistic Division, and his areas of research and professional interests include measures for human development, surveys methodology, and micro econometrics. So over to you, Arman.
Thank you, Nicolai, and very good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be with you here today and present one of the ESCAP's work on and supports to SDG implementation in Asia and the Pacific. I will be talking about a new tool which is developed by ESCAP called National SDG Tracker, which is an analytical tool supporting national follow-up and review of the SDGs. Among many other things, one of the supports that ESCAP provide to the global and regional dialogue on the sustainable development is monitoring the SDGs at the regional and sub-regional level. How ESCAP does it is basically we are using SDG indicators or the official SDG indicators. We are setting targets at the regional level and analyzing the regional aggregates and regional trends. And what you see on the right side basically is a snapshot of the progress that we produce to see what are the areas that the region is making progress and what are the priorities. Now, what does it take for a country in the region or anywhere in the world to produce the same type of a snapshot, which we believe is a very strong communication tool to basically have a dialogue on the national priorities on the SDGs and communicate it with high-level officials within the country as well as outside the country. For countries to do that, they would definitely need national SDG indicators, which is those global indicators, they're adopting it at the country level, plus those national indicators that they are using to complement the global SDG indicators. They're national target values so that their progress is specific to their country and is providing them with meaningful information for dialogue. And it also, they also need to use the national data, which is, of course, they have whatever we have at the global level, they're all national data, but sometimes at the country level, you have more updated data or additional data points on your own indicators so that you can analyze your own trends. And of course, finally, the countries need to own these results and be able to use it in their own products and reports. Now, with this in mind, ESCAP tried to develop a new tool, which is called National SDG Tracker, to help countries to basically use their own data and indicators and analyze them to produce the SDG profile. It facilitates access to your own data on the global database, and then in a very few steps, you can run the analysis and produce your own SDG profile and making sense out of your data. So it allows you to use your own indicators. It allows countries to use disaggregated data on SDG indicators when available. It lets you to basically edit data or add data if you don't want to use some of the SDG indicators. In few cases that they are not relevant possibly to your country, you can remove them from analysis, and more importantly, you can also set your own targets. And as a result, you will get a dashboard and a snapshot of SDG progress at 3 levels: at the goal level, at target level, and at the indicator level. So this is basically SDG tracker in a nutshell. There is, of course, lots of details in terms of how you use it and how analyze it, which are all available on the National SDG tracker homepage, which link is available here for you. So how it works, broadly speaking, you implement it in 3 different steps. First, you have to prepare your list of your indicators, which is SDG, global SDG indicators, and complemented with your national indicators, and set your national targets. Then tracker will help you to analyze those data, and then the third step is to produce the result and then use it in your national products. The results can be used in many different ways, but mainly it is for to inform your internal planning purposes, also to communicate your SDG implementation with regional and global audience, such as this forum, as well as high-level political forum or Asia-Pacific Sustainable Development Forum. You can use it for your national reporting purposes. You can plug it into your national web-based SDG platforms, or you can use it for VNR purposes as well. In more detail, if you wanted to look at how it is being implemented in countries so far, it takes 6 different steps to implement the tracker at the country level. First, we need to establish a technical team consisting the all relevant stakeholders in the government to review and finalize and validate SDG data and indicators and set targets. And then with the support from ESCAP and other UN partners, you will implement that into the tracker and then verify the results, and they're ready to be launched and used. I'm pleased to share with you today that a good number of countries in Asia Pacific are implementing the SDG tracker or considering at the moment. We have at least 6 countries are in the process of implementation of the tracker. Among those, we have Kyrgyzstan in this sub-region, which has made a very good progress in implementing SDG tracker on their own data and indicators. We have initial talk with Uzbekistan, working very closely with UN country team and in particular with RC office. We had some talks with our UN colleagues at Turkmenistan as well, and trying to make sure that this tool is available to countries, and they're happy to work with other countries if they would like to implement and find it useful. You can get access to the tool on tracker website, which is available on this slide, or you can directly get in touch with ESCAP so that we can discuss how this can be used in your country and how we can support you. Thank you very much. I'll stop here, and I'm happy to try to answer if you have any questions. Thank you, Nicolai. Over to you.
Thank you, Arman, very much for this very important presentation on SDG National Tracker. I think it's the interest of member states in North and Central Asia is growing to this tool, and ESCAP is actively cooperating with Kyrgyzstan currently, and with Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and other countries, Kazakhstan, so for using this tool for preparation of VNRs. Thank you very much. So, colleagues, I would like to move to our next speaker. As you noted, during the COVID-19, the role of voluntarism seriously increased, and this organization, UN Volunteers, they are not only supporting people during the COVID-19 situation, but they also provide support to VNR preparation. And our next speaker is Ms. Rima Sabaeva. She is regional manager for Europe and CIS countries, UN volunteers. She had more than 12 years of experience with UNV in different positions and contributed towards UNV national, sub-regional, and regional program development, partnerships building, and volunteer mobilization in Kazakhstan and Central Asia region. So over to you, Rima.
Thank you very much, Nicolai. Can you hear me? Can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, we can hear you and see you and slides.
Yes, if someone allow me to just to move slides, yeah, it would be good. Thank you. Добрый день всем участникам форума сегодняшнего.
Hello, distinguished participants of today's forum. Let me just continue in Russian. I represent, as Nicolai already mentioned, regional office of UNV for Europe and CIS. As you know, UNV program helps in promoting volunteer issues and integrating volunteer practice into national practices under UN leadership and partnership. And we also mobilize volunteers of UN as experts to support projects and programs launched by UN. Today, at this platform, let me present.
Colleagues, I cannot move slide. I don't know why. If you can help me.
Rima, I'm afraid you are sharing the slides, so I cannot take over it. But if you click left or right.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. Сегодня на этой площадке разрешите мне представить практики.
Today, let me just present the practices of integrated volunteerism into national voluntary national reviews. Its number increasing from year to year. More and more countries just acknowledge volunteers as a real tool to help those who need it. You can see just dynamics or trends since 2016. There's development trends where like 4 out of 21 countries just provided VNR. Back in 2021, out of 41 countries, 26 have already reported a positive contribution of volunteerism into SDGs. Among our sub-region, in 2019, Kazakhstan just made this review, Uzbekistan in 2020, which just confirmed the volunteer movement into SDGs. And in 2020, there was the program to encourage senior citizens to participate in the society, including through volunteer movement, so to help them lead healthier lifestyle and avoid loneliness. A number of countries also reported on the most important vital roles that were played by volunteer movement during the pandemic, COVID pandemic. So all these changes can be just seen in the plans of civil development of our countries, including Northern and Central Asia. Such initiatives as volunteer medical workers, inclusive education, and other social spheres. We hope that in the future we will see in VNRs of our countries the contribution that was made during the pandemic time. Then VNR of 2020, Uzbekistan reported that volunteer groups and citizens joined the law enforcement agencies during the pandemic and provided logistical support and care to the most vulnerable groups of population and assisted in detecting diseases. And how organizations can help and support VNR process in terms of contribution by volunteer movement. First, by evidence gathering, which is carried out by statistical offices through national service, national analysis, and other contributions from volunteers. Through the qualitative national situation analysis on volunteer movement, which is prepared by member states and in compliance with the plan of action to integrate volunteer movement, and other integrations which are stated in other reports. As far as UN and other organizations, how they contribute to this, promote this UN volunteer contribution, you can find it at the portal, knowledge portal of our organization. You can see here, so the link knowledge.unv.org, so which just confirms the materials of volunteer movement in the national context, including national statistics on the volunteer work activities. So we can find the best practices and examples from different countries here. Second, this is by online service, which is, for example, carried out through UN volunteer platform. It comprises over 600,000 persons registered there on the online volunteers. Special service, ad hoc service were just developed for national statistics agencies, which can be used in the national online volunteers and just carry out remote service to get feedback and just make its contribution into these reviews. Additional information on national statistical data can be found, or volunteer work can be found at the ILO official website, with which we cooperate in studying volunteers' contribution. And the third way is through consultations, as you know, workshops with different stakeholders, with participation of volunteers and organizations that involve volunteers in order to document initiatives and approaches in various SDGs, and various workshops with volunteers who work with different groups with people with disability.
Разным исследованиям, анализу данных и отчетности. И один из
Your volunteers program is also focused on reporting, and one of the example is a global report on volunteers in the world. This report has been published every 3 years. This year, it is linked with International Volunteers Day, and it will be the 4th edition of the report. This report is produced together with Gallup Institution on volunteers' contribution against the pandemic. The national report was collected in 8 countries. Out of our region, Uzbekistan was picked up as a respondent country. And here what we can see based on this report, 3 out of 4 volunteers, practically in every 8 countries, these were people above average age. And on the second diagram, you see the changes of volunteering, where in some countries it is down and the others it is up. It depends upon the epidemiological situation in a given state. How people are doing volunteering? Mostly they are providing unpaid assistance to their friends and neighbors, but not so many organizations and programs which were supported by the state or other sectors. If we have a look at Uzbekistan specifically, so here we can see that after volunteers' support in their neighborhood, there are some programs and activities with the governmental support, which is quite an interesting experience for Uzbekistan. And answering the question on plans for the next year in Uzbekistan, people answered that those people who are volunteering to participate in state programs with a greater probability will continue their volunteering rather than those who just providing support to their friends and neighbors. And the survey also proved that people are interested in bigger spectrum of volunteering. Of course, the most popular point was to support friends and neighbors, but the provision of new solutions of the existing problems raised very big attention amongst volunteers. Once again, I would like to pay your attention on the portal UN Volunteers, which is collecting data on volunteers' contribution to SDGs progress, and it is also a compilation of best world practices on volunteers, and we will be very happy to communicate with the representatives of this sub-region on volunteering. Thank you.
Very interesting and comprehensive report on the activities of UNV. It's really very important and highly appreciated by all member states. Thank you very much. Colleagues, we have some time for questions and answers. You listen to different speakers from different organizations and representatives of different stakeholders and member states. So maybe you have some questions maybe to particular speakers or just general questions. So please, the floor is open for any questions and answers, exchange of views, comments, and so far. So please raise your hands or indicate that you would like to speak or to put your question. Let me see if anyone has questions. If not, I will ask some maybe some speakers for comments. So we have listened a lot of presentations on different aspects of VNR preparation and so on. And there is a question, how better we can make preparation of the VNRs? What kind of maybe gaps and challenges we face during the preparation? And how to overcome these gaps and challenges? What do we think about that? Maybe some participants would like to share comments and to ask questions in this regard. So yeah, so it seems that we have not questions. Everything is clear. So that is also a good result. So I would like to give the floor to Bucket Gul to share her reflections and her impression on the session and how can ESCAP and other stakeholders help Kazakhstan in preparation of this next VNR. Over to you, Bakitgul. Are you with us? Yeah, it seems she's disconnected. So maybe I will request Kathleen to share. Yeah, Bakitgul is back with us. Bakitgul, over to you. Yeah, so we are just discussing, and we would like to know your reflection from this session. What do you think about the next steps for preparation of VNR of Kazakhstan, and how stakeholders can assist in this preparation? Over to you, Bakitgul.
Спасибо.
Thank you. Yes, first of all, I would like to say that today we have extremely useful session to all of us. For I myself learned a lot, and I was exposed to another extra amount of useful knowledge in terms of stakeholders' attraction for the VNR drafting in Kazakhstan. First of all, we have to bear in mind that today we got our request approval, and coordinating bodies, the Ministry of National Economy, because the Committee on SDG monitoring is at the National Economy Ministry, and I believe that we can move forward according to our plan. The further steps, if we're talking about the VNR preparation, every stakeholder, first of all, has to draft their own proposals to the VNR, and then the National Economy together, Economy Ministry together with the Secretariat, as it was in 2015, I hope that this time we would also have public debates. And what I prepared now and demonstrated now, this is not a final structure of our VNR draft, and that is why I believe stakeholders have opportunity to introduce their own proposals on the VNR structure. We welcome all the stakeholders from the very start. Currently, of course, we are involved into the preparatory works, and I hope that every stakeholder will use their chance to be part of the VNR drafting in Kazakhstan. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bakitgul, for your vision. Of course, this will be taken into consideration by all stakeholders. First of all, UN ESCAP. UN ESCAP will closely coordinate with you the preparation of the new voluntary national report, and I hope as a result we'll come up with a new interesting report. I also would like to say that on behalf of our partner, first of all, in ESCAP, we could expect methodological support, because I see that you have experts who already assisted us back in 2019. Of course, without professional expert support in this regard, it will be very difficult for us to draft the VNR alone, and expert support will ensure better quality of our report. Thank you. Thank you, Paket Gul, very much. Yeah.
Maybe for sharing her views. Caitlin, are you with us?
Hi. Hi, thank you very much. It was a fascinating session. I think I'm most struck by the speaker from Georgia. And I think she had a lot of really careful considerations to say. And I think that was probably her views about how she would wanted to be involved much more than just in reading a draft. You know, that really struck me. And I think it's important that we start the VNR process by really asking stakeholders how they would like to be involved. And I know that Azerbaijan this year in their third VNR really made some changes and really involved stakeholders, in particular the private sector. So I think there's some great lessons for Kazakhstan about really involving stakeholders right now and asking them how they would like to be involved and making sure that there's enough time for their feedback. And I think that's great that, you know, the VNR process is already starting now in Kazakhstan. There's plenty of time now to really sit down with the key stakeholders and discuss it. And I think the role of volunteers has a key role as well. And I think their expertise in helping mobilize stakeholders, getting people to consultations, helping get different documents out to the community so they can have their say. And I think it's really great to hear about the role of volunteers and the role of civil society. Second VNRs are really an opportunity to deepen stakeholder engagement and really an opportunity to tell your story to the global stage, but also to all the different stakeholders in your country to get the conversation going on SDGs. So really, thank you for a great meeting. It's great to hear from so many different countries. And I look forward to hearing about everyone's VNRs in the next year or so. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caitlin, for your impression. It's really great to have such an expert you see in our team who is willing to assist our member states in preparation excellent reports. Thank you very much. And now, colleagues, I would like to give the floor to Natalia for announcement. Natalia, over to you.
Dear participants, we do not want to keep you any longer. It's already late and we're all tired after a long day of meetings, but please could I ask 2 more minutes of your time to complete another evaluation questionnaire. We're doing one every session. They really help us to understand whether what we have prepared and shared with you has been useful or how we could otherwise improve it. So the links are in the chat. Please just click on the link and you can complete the evaluation either in English or Russian. And as you know from the first session, it's quite fast. So if I could kindly ask you to do it now, and then we would be done for today. And tomorrow, the second day, is our maybe most substantively focused day in the sense that we will look at the SDGs. So we will have 3 sessions tomorrow. We'll start 12 o'clock Almaty time with a session on quality education, SDG 4. We have a great lineup of speakers and discussants. Then we have a session on SDG 5, gender equality. Again, some very interesting case studies there, and we have some new data from the region. And then we have in the afternoon a session on SDG 14 and 15, where we're so happy that also we can share some new data from some of these less conventional data sources that have been mentioned today, such as satellite data and so on. And also we have some fantastic examples from all over the region of projects that are doing the right thing. So please join us again tomorrow. But first of all, complete the evaluation questionnaire, and thanks from my side. Dear participants, some of you are asking how you can complete the evaluation in Russian. So go onto the link, and then once you entered the link, on the top right hand of the screen, there is an option, English or Russian. So you can click there, and then you will have the evaluation form in Russian. Yeah, thank you. Dear participants, once you've done with your evaluation questionnaire, I think that's it for today. So thank you so much for having joined us, and see you all again tomorrow at 12 o'clock, and looking forward to another round of interesting and very varied sessions. Have a good evening, and until tomorrow, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all participants, all speakers for your participation and contribution to the success of this session. All the best and have a nice day. Спасибо всем за участие.
Hi, Natalia, can you hear me? This is interpreter speaking. Natalia, can you hear me? This is interpreter speaking.
Yes, hi, I can hear you. Sorry. My colleagues are also here.
Ainura told us to stay on the line extra time to discuss something about tomorrow's mode of operation.
Yes, correct. Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Timur. Can you hold on 5 minutes? Would that be okay? Timur?
You can, yes, you can remove us as an interpreter, so I can speak with everyone.
Попросить, чтобы мы тогда на флоре участвовали в обсуждении.
Ага, хорошо. Валентин это сделает для вас сейчас.
Потому что это уже неудобно там менять каналы.
Извините.
Можете меня оставить как обычного участника, и Анну тоже.
Хорошо, хорошо. Валентин, попробуйте сейчас их в участников нормальных вставить. И вы знаете, когда встреча будет? Те из Туркменистана, из Таджикистана, они могут, ребята, да, Валентин?
Ну, мы договорились на 6.
Ага.
На 6? Да что, еще 15 минут нам ждать, что ли?
Извините.
А какая наша роль в этом? В чем там проблема? Я вот так и не понял, в чем задача наша.
Да, мы сами тоже еще проблему как-то никак не можем понять или решить. Валентин, вы можете остаться и объяснить Тимуру и Ане, в чем дело, а я в другую встречу перейду обратно. Валентин, можно так сделать? Тогда я сейчас отключусь отсюда на минутку. Валентин, да, хорошо? Вы останетесь?
Валентин, вы можете нас убрать в качестве переводчиков, чтобы мы просто могли участвовать?